Aloha. I've been wanting to do a video on the Dunning Kruger effect, and then I came across this video by SciManDan about Candice Owens thinks dinosaurs are what? So it actually came out yesterday. I didn't know that when I watched it. So I watched it yesterday. It came out yesterday. It has 348,000 views already. And after this video, I'm gonna watch this video with you guys, explain some things that I think, and then we're gonna go over the Dunning Kruger effect and another video I saw about Candice Owens yesterday. So here we go, SciManDan. Let's go to the beginning.
Over here in the UK, we don't really know who Candice Owens is.
We do
but
here.
having recently checked it out, I can confirm that she has some worrying views.
Yes, she
Not
does.
least on science. You don't want to miss this one. Here we go.
With a tinfoil hat.
Hello all and
Tinfoil
welcome along to
Tuesdays,
another
it
episode
is.
of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, SciManDan. Thank you very much for joining me. Right, on with today's video, which features Candice Owens, and it's taken from the Jack Neal podcast. Now, all was pretty normal for her, I guess, until Jack asked about the moon landings. Here we go, everyone.
I want to go more into the moon landing, actually. You called the moon landing the Easter Bunny for adults, which I think is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, that I love that we're talking about this because, so what's funny is a lot of people, like, we just have good, like, you have your instinct. I always say, like, your gut is divine. Like that, somebody tells you something and you just go, doesn't really make sense, right?
Yes, this is called personal incredulity. It means you can't believe or understand something. Therefore, you don't believe that something.
I don't really know, but then suddenly psychology, what they've realized, and this gets back to Sigmund Freud and then Edward Bernays, who was considered the father of propaganda in America, who was Sigmund Freud's nephew, they realize that if you just keep saying to someone something, it becomes true. And again, the bigger of a lie, people will believe it.
I don't know about that. Flat earthers have been saying that the earth is flat for decades and still people don't believe them.
And so what we have is what Scott Adams refers to as the non-expert problem. So your gut tells you, like, sounds pretty crazy that we went to the moon all these times for a couple of years and then we just didn't go back forever and we were just like done. Like, that sounds weird. And where's the technology? And they didn't even have cell phones. And like, you're talking.
Remember she said the non-expert problem. We'll get to that when we get to talking about Dunning Kruger. But you see how she's all chest up just talking about like things that she has no clue about, like she knows everything about it, right?
They live streamed this and there was a phone call. I don't know, like, it just seems like a little weird for like 1969. But you're like, well, I don't really understand kind of outer space. So I'm not going to debate this, but my gut tells me this is all BS. That was where I was.
Yes, and you said it yourself, the non-expert problem. Although this does not stop a lot of people telling you things that they've got no business or qualification to do so.
And then what's interesting is that Bill Maher made fun of me for this like little tweet that I said that, I don't know, the moon landing just seems weird. And whenever the media like tries to make you feel like you're stupid, that's usually for me like the first breadcrumb that like you're onto something, because that's what they are trained to do. They're trained to sit here and tell you, you're ridiculous, you don't believe this.
Well, in this instance, I can tell you that you are not onto something. But to be honest, thinking that you are because Bill Maher made fun of you is not ideal, is it?
Right.
And I decided to read this document. It was 119 pages. And I know there's a book too, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, and he just broke down the science in a way that was very digestible, so I didn't have a non-expert problem.
Yeah, you still do, because Bart Sabrell, the author, is not an expert either.
And so there's a basic thing that you guys can do. If you're like somebody who's like, it had to have happened, the moon landing, what you can do is look up, I'm calling this the firmament, but it's the, what is the belt, the 200 miles out, you hit the
Asteroid belt? No.
Van Allen belt.
Closer to 400 miles, but stretching all the way out to 36,000 miles with an inner and outer belt, yes.
Okay, so there's a Van Allen belt. So we have never gone beyond that belt, right? There's been no human that's gone beyond that belt since the moon landings, allegedly. And not even Elon Musk, when they go out to space, they have to stay, like, there is a space station, but like once you get 200 miles out, you hit the Van Allen belt, which has an incredible amount of radiation. NASA has said, like, in order for us to get through it, we'd have to have cement blocks around someone.
I don't think NASA have ever said that, have they, Candice? During the Apollo missions, spacecraft were planned to pass carefully through the belts as quickly as possible, reducing the amount of time exposed to radiation. Astronauts spent only a few minutes passing through the most intense parts of the Van Allen belts. That is all.
So I want you to just Google, if you're watching this, the temperature of the Van Allen belt. Okay, just Google that.
Yes, please do, and then proceed to misinterpret heat and temperature, which of course are not the same thing.
And you're gonna get something like, at the lowest points in the Van Allen belt, it's I think 3,000 Kelvin. And at the highest points, it's like 30,000 Kelvin. And then I want you to Google what material the shuttle was made out of. And then I want you to Google at what temperature
that would burn.
That would just burn. And you're just going to laugh out loud. You go, this literally doesn't make sense that an aluminum alloy could have gone through the Van Allen belt for an hour and a half or 59 minutes. It just couldn't have happened. It literally can't happen. There's no explanation for it. They just don't even talk about it. They don't like talking about the Van Allen belt because that part makes entirely no sense.
And yes, you have done just that. The temperature of the Van Allen belts is indeed that high, but the air pressure up there is almost non-existent. For heat to transfer like that, you need collisions of particles. So conduction or convection. And even though the particles in the Van Allen belt have high energy, they do not carry enough thermal energy because of the low density of particles to significantly heat a spacecraft. The spacecraft's materials and design handle this limited heat transfer with no problems at all. Now, no one is afraid to talk about that. It's a simple explanation correcting your misunderstanding.
And then he went through and he spoke about like the camera. So they allegedly took camera. I want you to Google the temperature of the moon, okay? They had their big bulky gloves on, they took these cameras, and just go, hey, what camera is that from 1969 that was able to survive temperatures of like 250 degrees Fahrenheit to like negative 250 degrees Fahrenheit, just like on the moon while they were just like jumping around.
The same principle I just talked about then applies here too. You're not proving anything with this.
And you're gonna go, where's this camera? Then you're gonna then Google.
She's proving she hasn't taken a science class.
I was gonna tell you, oh, actually, they only made 8 of those cameras, and they decided to give them, you're gonna love this, to a guy who makes movies. I'm blanking on the name of this guy.
Stanley Kubrick.
Just a couple of years before the moon landing, he's a famous director. He made a movie about outer space. What's it? Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, he has them?
A movie director. He got them.
And that's simply not true. Again, most of the Hasselblad cameras used on the Apollo missions were left on the moon to save weight on the return journey. The only thing NASA gave Kubrick was a lens used for space photography. That is it.
So we can't look at those. That technology's been lost. Stanley Kubrick, though, used it when he shot the movie 2 years prior. It's like he obviously shot this like fake set moon landing. Why would you give them to him?
As I said, they didn't, Candice.
And it's
Do you know who he was friends with?
Who was he friends with?
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You don't know this. So he was friends with Jack Parsons, who established the Apollo program for NASA. So those two were friends. They were out in LA, and they literally worshipped Satan. They were both Aleister Crowley recipients. So they were considered, the religion was called Thelema. They believed that they could create the they read, basically Aleister Crowley was a Satanist, the most well-known Satanist of the time. And he basically, when he was a kid, he read the Bible, read Revelation, read about the whore of Babylon, which would like conquer the nations, and got inspired by the whore of Babylon and created a religion about that, which was called Thelema. And his protege was Jack Parsons. He was the creator of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which became the Apollo program.
Okay, first off, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory did not become the Apollo program. And Jack Parsons was a founder of JPL, but not the Apollo missions. His work helped with the Apollo missions, yes, but he didn't start the program. Anyway, Jack moves on to dinosaurs, and it gets a bit more interesting from here.
It's interesting, the conspiracies that we've been talking about so far, there's a lot of incentive structures, like reasons that the government would want to push these narratives for their own benefit. But one that you talked about, and you haven't gone into it too much in depth, but you don't believe dinosaurs are real.
So this is a funny one. So this is one of the ones where I'm like, gut. I'm not kidding. This conversation happened, and it was so funny. I was just walking with Savannah, my manager, because we do like these little evening walks, and I just looked up to her and I was like, dinosaurs? That seems pretty fake and gay.
Really? The concept of dinosaurs is not only fake to you,
what does it even mean that dinosaurs are gay?
but they also have a sexuality?
Ooh, what do you call a lesbian dinosaur? We lick a lot of puss.
Right.
She's like, Savannah's from Tennessee. She's like, I've never believed in dinosaurs. Like, literally, everyone thinks there's like some conspiracy behind it. I was like, that was how it started. And I was like, what on earth? You rawr. I'm like, it's funny because people will literally say they don't believe in God, but then tell them like dinosaurs aren't real and they fall apart. Like, I'm like, okay, so they're just roaming the planet. And I was like, that's really interesting. But then because I got into and very much subscribe and believe and know to be true that there is a Christ conspiracy that's happening right now, which is the intentional removal of Christ because they want people not to believe in God, but instead to believe in humans.
Yeah, that's called people going about their daily lives not worried about a deity. It's not anti-Christ, it's just a non-belief.
Well, that is what evolutionary theory was about. Because rather than making human beings believe that they had a creator, there was no concept of a dinosaur until 1850. That's very recent, right? That's the first time they were like, we actually think that there were these reptiles that are roaming the planet. And then within that same decade, they were like, dinosaur bones. And they started finding them everywhere. I'm like, okay, so nobody found this.
Again, not true. The word dinosaur came after the discovery of dinosaur bones. And Richard Owen coined the phrase in 1842. The first dinosaur bones, the very first ones, were found 200 years before that.
And then suddenly there's entire museums, and in China they have actually been caught manufacturing dinosaur bones many times over. And it is the case that dinosaur bones, for whatever reason, are always just found by the paleontologists. Like, it's not like you and me walking outside. I'm like, hey, a dinosaur bone. And, or by...
That's not true, I wouldn't think. But I would say that dinosaur bones are probably found more by paleontologists because they go around digging, looking for dinosaur bones. I ain't never looked for a dinosaur bone.
Somebody who's related to a paleontologist, it's very strange.
Maybe in school or something as a kid.
Found the first ever Argentinosaurus bone. And that's just one example. There's many more. Again, that was not true.
Anyways, I don't know for sure.
But you think the incentive structure there is to move away from God?
Well, they want you to believe that God isn't real. That, like, the theory of evolution, like, you're an ape. What happened was just over time. Like, you used to be a little chimpanzee, but then with time, this is why you learned about the theory of evolution, Homo sapien, Australopithecus, but then we were Homo erectus, and now you're a human being.
Isn't that the definition of Satanism?
Yeah.
Like, to believe that, like, Earth is the kingdom, kind of?
Yes, and that is what these people were pushing. And so once you start to realize that Satanism is real, that these people who created everything that we view in Western society to be real believed in Satan, right?
But Satan is equally as fictional. They are also incorrect. And on top of that, I know several people that are religious, believe in God, and understand that dinosaurs were real. You're talking as if the only people that understand dinosaurs were real are atheists. They're not.
They know God's real, and yet they're convincing everyone that God isn't. And so when you speak to people that are super rational out of school, you're like, well, the evolutionary theory makes sense. So it makes sense to you that you started as a chimpanzee. Like, that's a faith, buddy. It makes sense to you. And if you say to them, like, of course you went to the moon, then you start talking about basic science, but they don't actually know. They can't talk to you about Van Allen belt. They don't know anything. It's a faith.
And you don't know these things either, Candice, which is why you're wrong.
Like, they have asserted, and what's interesting, even that, going to the moon, the Bible talks about a firmament. And if the firmament in the Bible, if you look at that, you would go, okay, well, it says that as below, so above, and this is how God created it. So if the Bible is real, which I know in my heart to be true, there's no way we got past this firmament.
Again, there are plenty of people.
You don't know stuff in your heart. You pump blood in your heart. You don't even love from your heart. I think it's so weird that people say that.
On this earth who are religious, believe in God, and understand that we went to the moon.
But it's interesting because, yeah, once you start to realize that all of it is about countering everything that is in the Bible, right? You have a creator. No. Evolutionary theory is real, actually. What happened was a meteor hit, and I don't know, like, the meteor hit and wiped out the dinosaurs, but then, like, the lizards came. I don't even really, when you get down to even just thinking about that, you're like, okay, so it wiped out the dinosaurs. Then what happened? They're like, well, then the amoeba was around, but then, like, little lizards are from that. I actually don't have a lot of questions. I wish I was in 6th grade again, because they tell us all this stuff, like dinosaurs are like when you're in 2nd grade.
She's the one going to tell you to Google the Van Allen belt and all this stuff. Why wouldn't she Google what happened right after the what do you call it, the asteroid hit? And it's like, it killed what, 90, even 99% of the animals, something like that. But there's a few animals left, and then that's when, like, the mammals got to come up or whatever, because it was mainly reptiles before then. But just the way it was left, I guess the mammals could survive a little better, and that's why we eventually became the heads of the world. But Google,
guys are like,
she gonna talk with so much of her chest on about she don't know stuff.
Yeah, guys are the hardest about the dinosaur. They are dinosaur stands.
I love dinosaurs growing up.
I know, boys love it. It's like a culture. So when I said this on my show, I was like, dinosaurs are freaking gay. My producer, all the boys were like, no, you've taken it too far.
You've just openly admitted that you don't know enough about it, but then continue to say that they're fake. You see the issue here, Candice? I think we'll leave this one now and say that we're all done and dusted for another Tinfoil Tuesday. Let me know.
Full Tuesday. Now we're going to go on to the video about Dunning Kruger to explain why Candice Owens can talk so much with her chest while saying she doesn't even know what she's talking about. It is kind of crazy. Now we're going to talk about why Candice Owens can speak this way. She can speak like she, with her chest and all strong, even saying she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's crazy. Like, she, in the same sentence, she's talking about, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but she's saying dinosaurs and stuff. But here we go. The Dunning Kruger
On April
effect.
19th, 1995, MacArthur Wheeler robbed a bank with his face glazed with lemon juice, believing the juice would make his face invisible to the surveillance cameras. He thought so because lemon juice works as invisible ink on a piece of paper. Police broadcasted the security camera footage on the local 11 o'clock news, and just after midnight, Arthur was arrested. Incredulously, he said, "But I wore the juice!" Baffled by this reasoning, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, two psychologists, studied Mr. Wheeler and others like him. They came to the conclusion that people with low ability at a task tend to, paradoxically, overestimate themselves. This cognitive bias is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Let's look at this graphically, plotting one's confidence in your ability against one's actual knowledge in a field. As we learn something new, we are often highly confident because we know so little that as soon as we know a tiny bit, we think we know it all. Those who stop learning here maintain a false sense of mastery.
Yes.
Those who continue learning realize things are more complex and often lose motivation. And the more they increase their knowledge, the lower their confidence becomes. Many stop at this stage, thinking they've learned nothing. Only if we keep going can we regain confidence while getting better. And at the end, we will be full of knowledge and almost as confident in our ability as right after we started. In other words, if a simpleton, a good student, and a wise teacher were to have a public debate, this is how things could go down. The simpleton knows just a little bit, but is very confident and voices his opinions loud and without hesitations. The student knows more, but doesn't realize it because she lacks confidence. She keeps quiet. The teacher is confident, but understands how complex things really are. Hence voices his opinions with reservations. In the end, the simpleton wins the popular vote because he is so confident about being right, and people tend to trust certainty.
And that's how Candice
Research
Owens
from North
and Ben
America,
Shapiro be winning
Europe,
debates.
and Japan suggests that culture plays a big role. From assessments of one's own ability to drive, we know that 93% of Americans think they are better drivers than average, while only 69% of Swedish think so. In Japan, on the other hand, people in general tend to underestimate their abilities as a strategy to see their underachievement as an opportunity to improve. Setting out on a journey of learning can be a daunting experience.
Yeah, if you're at the top, if 93% of people think they're some of the best drivers on the road, you don't think you need to get better, right? If you always assume that you're not as good as you are, or just, not the best, then you always have room for improvement. You're trying to get better all the time, so that makes sense.
What starts off as a leisurely stroll soon changes into an intense battle of willpower between you and an intimidating amount of knowledge. Do not give up. The longer you fight, the more power you gain, up until the point you win. And in the end, if you persevere, you may be elevated to the ranks of Socrates, who over 2,000 years ago left us with a quote of wisdom. I know that I am intelligent, because I know that I know nothing.
So this is from Sprout Schools, the Dunning Kruger effect. Explains perfectly why Candice Owens can act the way she acts. And just even say, so she's at that first part where she just learned a little bit, just enough to think that she's an expert, right? But then she never went on. And she said many times, I don't even know. And so why are you talking about something you don't even know? I just have a gut feeling. Not very smart. Now, Amazing Lucas also came out with a video about Candice Owens yesterday that I just happened to look at. So we'll go over that a little bit too. Never mind, it came out a year ago. Still, same premise.
It's dumb.
How are you this dumb? he's talking about Candice Owens.
So we have this video of Candice Owens debunking a reparations scam. Imagine having a title like that. You already know, huh? How do you tell me that you're white ignorant without telling me you're white ignorant? Nevertheless, I know Candice Owens. I've talked to her on several occasions, and Candice Owens is intellectually anemic and historically just ignorant. Because if I'm ignorant on something, at least I'm going to be quiet until I do my due diligence and research. But
right, so
that's
the opposite of the Dunning Kruger effect, right? Some people understand they don't know stuff, so they're not going to say anything. Some people want to say stuff so bad that they just get a little bit of info and they just started spouting off at the mouth, Candice Owens style.
Speaks freely. And then white ignorance applaud. So, it's a nice little hustle. Don't get me wrong, it's a nice little hustle. Now, Candice Owens, as I told you, is not the brain of Candice Owens. Candice Owens is nothing more than a spokesperson, right? Now, as a spokesperson, you don't have to know anything about what you're saying. You just have to speak passionately about what you're being told to promote. The brains of this organization would be Charlie Kirk. I personally, firsthand experience, have witnessed Charlie Kirk give her talking points, guide her through arguments and rebuttals, right? That's what Charlie Kirk's point is, right? He manufactures these Sambos. Getting into the video, you have Candice Owens, who is on this panel, and this outstanding young black bright man asks her, hey, why are you so against reparations? Why do you think we don't deserve reparations? Like, you got a form of reparations when you sued.
So, why don't you think we deserve reparations? I mean, you did get a check for a racist act back when you were in high school.
Mwah! I give you that is a great example, because I guess you could say I wouldn't call it reparations, but yes, she did get a check cut when she was crying about racial discrimination. She got $35K of the school board, right? Now, she wants to act like that didn't happen, right? Because in her answer, she doesn't even address it, right? She deflects. Oh, well, that's not the same thing. Yes, boo-boo, it very much is. Especially someone who wants to talk about racism is a big problem. I love white people, but we already see she's already invested in her race. And by what I mean by her race, she's married George Farmer. She married into money, right? Got a baby out of it, okay? She got pregnant, then got married, but she secured the bag. That's her goal. She then responds that, yay, I was never a slave. The classic white ignorant talking point.
So first off, these are two different points. I do not think that we deserve reparations for slavery. I was never a slave in this country,
and it's so just base level, right? It's a very shallow talking point, because no one's saying that you are in fact a slave, right? Just like when white ignorants want to say, I didn't own any slaves. Nobody's saying that you did own any slaves. Nobody's saying that. That's never been an argument anywhere. No one's presented that, right? However, we will admit that there are descendants of slaves, okay? And even though you weren't a slave owner, you benefited from slave labor. You benefited from the slave labor that this country exploited and used and never repaid. In addition to that, it's a little bit more than just slavery. Dr. Williams Darity goes over this. Dr. Claude Anderson goes over this. There's a slew of actual intellectual professors and historians that actually go over your grievances, right? Any.
It's also not just slavery. It's white people being able to pass down their homes and their wealth. Black people got their wealth stolen every time they made wealth. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Forsyth County, Georgia. There's all kinds of places. Alton, Illinois. My family got chased out of town in the 50s, 60s. Yeah, my dad was already born. My dad was born in 50, and they got chased out of town after he was born. And they had to leave Alton, Illinois. So we didn't get to keep our family stuff, our family home from there and whatnot. It's like, it's not just slavery.
Any questions you have, they answer it. That it also has to do as far as with Jim Crow. It has to do with.
But okay, he's probably going to go into some of this. But again, that's Candice Owens not being informed and then wanting to talk on a whole bunch of stuff that she don't know about.
Redlining. It has to do with mass incarceration. It has to do with a plethora of things that were directly targeted in a concerted effort to undermine Black America. That's what that has to deal with. And the giant umbrella that encompasses all of this is the wealth gap. That is a prime example why this exists. It's not because, white ignorants want to say you're not working hard, you're not businesses. No, that's not the case. So once she fails with saying I was never a slave, she tries to take the shotgun approach. And usually when someone tries to take the shotgun approach, they have no argument, right? They just shoot out a bunch of stuff that, you know, if it hits, it hits. If it misses, it misses. But they're just bombarding you with a bunch of really weak-formed arguments. So then she talks about, oh, if anything, you're just going to get $200. It's never going to happen.
And I think that the idea, if you think that you're going to get more than $200 from the government, okay, this entire debate is just it's a joke.
So which one is it? Because he didn't ask if it's ever going to happen. He asked, do you deserve it? Okay, those are two very different questions. So you believing it's never going to happen is not an argument against it, whether or not it should happen. Then she shoots off another piss poor argument, right? Which is saying, hey, do you think we're the only group that has had something bad happen to them?
It's never going to happen. Do you think that we're the only group, I'm just going to ask you this question, that has had something awful happen to them in this country?
Listen,
no.
Nobody is saying that. No,
most groups have awful stuff happening to them in this country.
That's what this country's all about. Arguments. It's a bunch of straw man fallacies. Nobody's saying that black people are exclusive, the only group that has had something done wrong to them. Nobody's saying that. However, we're the exclusive group that suffered from chattel slavery in this country. The only group that was used, their color was used to justify slavery. Okay? The only group in which it was backed by multiple religions nationwide. The only group that was taken from the homeland to this country in regards to chattel slavery. Okay? This, as far as when it came to chattel slavery in this country, specifically towards black Americans, yes, there are some exclusivities that have occurred to just us in this country. This now leads us to my favorite part, which really just exposes her just level of just stupidity. And that is she tries to act like Japanese. Well, what do you think the Japanese got reparations? And it's like, yeah, they did.
Did the Japanese get reparations for the internment camps?
Yes.
She's so
yes, they did. See, Dunning Kruger, right?
Anytime you have, that's why she doesn't do a lot of debates, right? She doesn't do a lot of debates with
because every black person who's ever talked about reparations talks about the Japanese got reparations and Jewish people got reparations. What kind of question? See how stupid she is? Like, how could you even ask that? And the boy even said yes.
Actual people. She'll maybe go to a college campus or go to somewhere, right? But she won't do an actual one-on-one debate with someone who knows her stuff because she's ignorant. But like I said, and this is perfectly exemplified in this video, when Charlie Kirk whispers to her, the Jews. And if you watch, you can see it all the video. He was, the Jews. Because she's saying dumb. She's saying cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right?
Does it happen to them? What about the Jewish people that happened to them? What about the Jewish people that happened to them? What about the Jewish people?
And when she says, oh, do you think the Jews got reparations? And we all know the Jews got reparations. Nobody is saying that the Jews got reparations by the United States. Nobody is saying that.
They still they get reparations by the United States to this day. We give money, all kinds of money to Israel. They got a country and get yearly reparations. Guarantee if you gave black people a state in the United States and gave that state the same amount of money that they give Israel, no black people would ever ask for reparations again. They just moved to that state if they wanted the reparations, right?
Heck, if we start looking at the funding that we give to Israel, heck, if we start looking at the special laws within our own country, and when it comes under the guise of anti-Semitism, oh yes, 100%. 100%. They getting reparations more ways than one, fam. More ways than one. Right. Then comes another fallacious talking point of the Irish. You know,
the Irish are slaves too, huh? Well, I'm gonna leave it here. If you want to finish this, I'm gonna obviously leave the link in the description. But Candice Owens, Dunning Kruger, I don't know if they're still around, but they need to study her because she is the perfect showing of it. Like she talks about how she doesn't know stuff that she's talking about. Then she's gonna bring up points like, oh, did the Japanese get reparations? I wish she would have showed the kids' answer because the kids said yeah, started to say yes, and probably would have broke it down a little bit to her. And then she's gonna talk the Jews. Yes, the Jews got a whole country. Israel's a country. Yeah, they got a whole country. And then we make sure that they get all kinds of military aid. They get all kinds of money. They get all kinds of reparations from us yearly. But she doesn't know any of this stuff because she doesn't look at things from across the spectrum.